We've heard lots of anger about the use of full-body scanners at airports, but what's the alternative? We've got the man. The head of the TSA joins us next. This is Hardball, only on MSNBC. We're back. As the fight over new airport security screening procedures continues, some pilots are speaking out against them, including the nation's best-known pilot, Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger. Here he is on today's MSNBC programs.
Airline pilots do have concerns about these screening procedures. First, they're not an effective and efficient use of our limited resources. I think we need to do a much better job of taking a risk-based approach. And I think since airline pilots are already the last line of defense in defending the cockpit against those who might use it for ill, and since we're very trusted partners in this important security process, I think we need to be treated as such. And we already have the means, if the TSA would choose to use it and implement it nationwide, to very quickly identify and verify each pilot's identity, to verify their current employment status, and that would go a long way to be much more effective at meeting any possible threat. And we also have concerns about the small additional radiation exposure.
But a new CBS News poll shows that the public overwhelmingly supports the procedures. 4 out of 5 say airports should use full-body X-ray machines. John Pistole is the administrator of the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. So glad that you are here. Respond, if you would, to Captain Sullenberger.
Well, thank you, Michael. I actually spoke with Sully yesterday. We had a good discussion, and it's interesting that when I started in this position, July 1 of this year, I brought a risk-based, intelligence-driven approach to how we go about our job of trying to provide the best possible security. So I agree with many of the things that Sully mentioned. The question is, what is the best way of implementing some of this risk-based approach? So I hope to have an announcement about a good way forward as it pertains to the pilots in the very near future.
I fear that this is getting away from you on the basis of internet lore, and I would love to break it down as best we can within a short time period and explain and separate some of the fact from fiction. Give me the short version. What's the drill? I fly, I walk up. What's about to take place?
So we have advanced imaging technology in about 80 airports now, and if you go there and want to opt out of that AIT machine, then you go through the walk-through metal detector and you would receive what we describe as a thorough pat-down. If you want to go through the AIT or walk-through metal detector and there's no alarms, no alerts, then there's no pat-down. So that's the basic process. The best way people can prepare is to make sure they have everything out of their pockets and that there's nothing in there that would show up on the advanced imaging technology machine.
Relative to the full body scan, have you fully vetted the health concerns?
Before they were deployed, and this actually goes back to the fall of '07 when the first ones were deployed, so this has been in process quite a while, obviously accelerated after the 1225 event with Abdul Muttalib and the non-metallic device. The FDA, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and Johns Hopkins all did independent assessments and all found that the radiation from these machines are well within the acceptable safety limits.
All right, I'm glad you referenced Johns Hopkins because, Mr. Pistole, this morning on my radio program, I had James Babb. He is one of those, he wrote for USA Today. As a matter of fact, today, he's one of those trying to organize a grassroots protest movement. And when I raised that subject with him, here's what James Babb, who runs the We Won't Fly organization, said. I want you to respond.
The study you mentioned from Johns Hopkins says, you know, because of the large number of people doing this, somebody's going to get cancer from it if this is allowed to continue.
Wait a minute. You're not saying that the Johns Hopkins people said that, are you?
Yes, I am.
What's the story?
As I understand that study, it talks about the probabilities, but it looks at the underlying issue, how much radiation is a person exposed to, and the analogy was about 3 minutes of flying at altitude, so let's say 30,000 feet. There have been other people who have done their assessment of the study who've come up with this idea that given the millions of air hours people are flying, there is a possibility out there at some point point that somebody may, and so many mays built in here, may have some additional exposure concerns. So I think I just have to go back to what the, again, FDA, NIST, and Johns Hopkins say about what is safe and acceptable, and that was their conclusions.
All right, here's another one that I hear from radio callers, the Muslim garb exception. You may not even know what I'm talking about, but if someone approaches a TSA checkpoint and they're wearing, by way of example, a burqa, what's the drill?
Well, everybody goes through the same process. So whatever their ethnicity or religious beliefs, which I'm sensitive to and appreciate, the bottom line is people are treated the same in terms of either going through the advanced imaging technology, if that's available, or the walk through the metal detector. And if they alert, then they would have to have that alert resolved. And the best way of doing that is through a thorough pat-down.
No free rides, right, Mr. Pistol?
That's correct.
Okay, another question. How invasive should a properly carried out pat down actually be? Because you hear some of the horror stories. There's this kid out in California who was raising a beef. How invasive a process should it be?
So the pat-down needs to be thorough enough to detect well-designed, well-concealed, non-metallic, especially explosive devices such as we saw on 12/25 last Christmas. So it needs to be thorough, and that this pat-down, coupled with the technology, is designed to identify and neutralize any possible threat in that regard.
Are you comfortable in saying that there's no way that someone who subjects themselves to the full body scan will ever have the image that's created, broadcast, saved, put out on the internet, et cetera, fill in the blank?
Yes, I am, because the machines that we have deployed at airports are deployed in the way that has all those capabilities that you mentioned rendered inoperable. So we don't have the opportunity to either store, transmit, do anything with those images. They are deleted as soon as the person is cleared. The next image comes up, and obviously we don't allow cameras, cell phones with cameras or anything in that screening room. And of course, we have the screener who sees the image, and again, it's an image. I've seen all these crazy things out there about the photos and different things. It is an image, and with parts blurred and things, but the person who sees that image never sees the person. The security officer who sees the person never sees the image, and again, those images are deleted and not retained. It's not possible to retain them.
And finally, Mr. Pistol, Captain Sullenberger made reference to risk-based processes. I'm not sure what he meant, and you also used some of that terminology. To me, risk-based means taking into consideration the commonalities of those who threaten the United States. I'm not going to use that dreaded P word because of all the connotations associated with it. Are we taking into consideration, as we seek to prevent an attack, the commonalities of those who would wreak havoc on this country?
Michael, we're trying to do everything possible, informed by the latest intelligence, to ensure that the traveling public is safe. So if it is intelligence says there is a group of individuals or a specific individual, obviously that's the best way to go. When we don't have that intelligence, then we try to do a risk-based approach and saying, what information do we know about the person? How can that help inform our judgments and our actions? But we are moving forward in a risk-based perspective. I think there's more to come on that, but the pilots that we were talking about, I think is a first step, again, in terms of how do we best apply this risk-based approach.
Mr. Pistol, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
When we return, why I'm no longer of use helping my fourth grader to do his math homework. You are watching Hardball only on MSNBC.